So, welcome to another CMC podcast. In today's Meet the Instructor episode, we have with us John McKently. So, John, you want to say hi?
Hey, good afternoon, morning, evening, whatever it is. Hello to everybody.
So, John, what you got you started in the search and rescue business?
Actually, I started on a volunteer rescue team in 1974, and I knew about the rescue team from people that were on it and reading about their exploits in the newspaper. And it came along with something because I was kind of an outdoorsy kind of person, and I knew the local mountains in Los Angeles County from living there my whole life, working there, being in the Boy Scouts and all that. And they saw an ad in the newspaper and said, hey, they were looking for people. And I go, well, wait a minute, I'm living here and I've got all the qualifications. I can do this. And so I was one of 130 applicants to the team, and they went through interviews and things like that. And they ended up taking 12 of us. And from that, 7 of us finished the application process and went through the Sheriff's Academy, which was a requirement to be on the volunteer rescue team. You had to be a reserve deputy. So kind of jumped through all those hoops and got on the rescue team that way. So unlike a lot of the CMC instructors, I wasn't, never have been really a career rescuer, in the fire service or in law enforcement. As a sworn reserve deputy, but I didn't do it as a career. I actually was a construction manager for a bank. And this was a hobby that later turned into my job when I became the director of the rescue school. So I kind of had it was a little bit backwards or a little bit different than certainly most of the rest of the CMC instructors.
Yeah. So, why don't you tell us about some of the kind of the SAR history? So you started on the volunteer team, and then you spent a few years on there, right?
Yeah, 47 plus years, where in effect, like I said, I turned my hobby into a job for. The first 20 years of that, I was a volunteer on the rescue team, and as I said, I worked for a bank, and the financial industry changed radically, and I got out of that business. And I had started working for CMC as a part-time instructor, as most of the instructors are, during the last couple of years at the bank. And so when the bank job disappeared, they said, hey, we're working on a confined space rescue manual. Can you work on that? So I basically was hired just hourly to work on the confined space rescue manual as well as teach classes. And we certainly didn't have the number of instructors as we do nowadays. And so I was teaching classes, working on the manual, and kind of putting that together as and then from that part-time job, the then director of the rescue school left CMC. And Jim and Steve said, are you interested in the job? And I said, yeah, okay, that sounds good. I've been doing it part-time. And to tell you the truth, I really didn't think that I would do it for another 27 years. I thought that I'd do it for a couple of years, and then I'd kind of go back to being a suit dweeb. But obviously that never happened,
Yeah.
So it was kind of a weird evolution and different than I say most of the instructors. But I did have a heavy background with mountain rescue as a volunteer. We're a very active team, still are very active, which doesn't sound like a lot for career fire guys, but 100 plus rescue call outs a year is probably double or triple the average for a volunteer mountain rescue team. So we were very active, and that gave me a good foundation for a lot of the work I've done at CMC.
Well, and yeah, maybe if you could talk a little about the area that you were a mountain rescuer in, because not only do you have population, you've got a lot of topography there.
Well, we've got that 10 million people in LA County, or that whatever number you want to count that are within an hour or two of our prime district. But it ranged from our particular area ranged in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, but our territory goes from about 1,000 feet in elevation to 10,000 feet at the county line. And we've got probably 50 or 60 miles of California Highway 2, which is well known for motorcycle riders and racers, and also in a lot of car commercials. And so we have a large area several hundred square miles that we're the prime responders for. And that includes everything from lost and overdue hikers to cars over the side. Unfortunately, suicides. There was one the other day the team did, to skiers and fishermen and all sorts of things. So the full gamut of wilderness search and rescue opportunities there. And the other thing that our team did at the request of California State Office of Emergency Services, we became an underground search and rescue team. So we're a mine rescue team, which was very unusual. It's a totally different environment, but it was a really good background for CMC because not my industrial and my construction experience I could bring to the table, but mine rescue is a specific kind of confined space rescue, and it's been very regulated. And we're talking about the early to mid 90s when the first edition of the CMC Confined Space Manual came out in 1995. It wasn't regulated. That's when the confined space thing, it was kind of the thing of the 90s and maybe the aughts, if you want to say that. But because of my mine rescue experience, I had a lot of experience and knowledge that I could bring into the party as far as the confined space manual. Yeah. And that was a little bit unique because, hey, a mine is it's a confined space with some, maybe things that are about it are a little bit different, but hey, it's small spaces and hazardous atmospheres and uncomfortable surroundings and things like that. So it fit with the true confined space very well.
Yeah. Now, did you guys have to deal with both active and abandoned mines then?
Well, we do and we don't. There are not a lot of active underground mines in Southern California, but what there are is a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of construction there's always construction in water and sewer and things like that are underground tunneling projects. But also there was a lot of transportation-related infrastructure that was going on in the Los Angeles County area for metro construction. So we were involved with that. And the contractors in a big mine is required to have mine rescue capability. But most of the mines that we respond to are either abandoned or inactive, or they're what they call small and remote mines, where it's a kind of a hobby mine or just a few people, and they're exempted from having a mine rescue team. So should they have an emergency, we'd actually be their first responders on that. But most of our work was actually done with construction projects and water utilities and things like that.
So was that like the directional boring machines then?
They used tunnel boring machines, some small, some large. There's projects going on right now, and those aren't usually a problem. The calls that we've had for mine rescues or mine recoveries, because we've done both of them, have all been the active and inactive mines. And California, of course, the Golden State, there are some number of those kinds of facilities in the state. Nobody knows for sure. It's been estimated at over 500,000 to maybe over 1 million, because miners were pretty secretive. If they were getting good gold out of it, they weren't telling anybody. If they're trying to sell it, it was the mother lode. But when it ran out, for whatever reason, the tunnels were there, and they're an attractive hazard, and they contain certainly unstable surroundings, possibly irrespirable atmospheres, usually low oxygen atmospheres. And so we get, it's one of those really low frequency but high risk situations where, fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, we really only get 1 or 2 calls a year for those kinds of environments. But when you get a call, it's definitely a big deal, so.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I know in one of the podcasts we had just aired not long ago, the cave rescue. One of the participants was on San Bernardino County Search and Rescue, and they do a lot of abandoned mines also.
Yeah, San Bernardino had one of the early mine rescue teams in the state of California. There were 2. The other one was in Kern County, and then they kind of fell a little bit on the wayside. And the San Bernardino cave team picked up that underground capability. And to those that aren't in the business, caves and mines are the same, right? They're dirty, dark holes in the ground, probably. But recreational caving and active working mining are very, very different sets of rules and circumstances. And if something were to happen and we get a big call, or they get a big call, I mean, they'd be the first ones that we would activate, just because the experience underground is a big deal. And I'm not a caver, but one of the first calls that we did as a team was actually a cave rescue in San Diego. So it was very successful, by the way, with 4 victims too. But unfortunately, lots of times when we're called, for the underground team is called, it's for either it's crime related. It's more law enforcement, because it's either a victim that's been possibly put into a mine. Somebody has been murdered and put into a mine. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of those. The coroner aspect of law enforcement, where somebody has either had the big one or whatever and died in a mine, and then we have to do the recoveries. Or many, many times we're called because of evidence searches in that environment. It's just not something that, if you don't have the tools and equipment and knowledge to go into a mining environment, you're just going to get yourself in more trouble. So we really try to emphasize to people that if you have that kind of environment, just don't go in there, because it isn't the same as the outside world, and it can cause a lot of problems for everybody.
Yeah. And also, kind of going back to that, you guys had mentioned through your district, you had the Highway 2, and you guys did a lot of car overs. And if I recall, that actually drove some research and actually even a paper at IDERS.
Car overs are unfortunately a bread and butter item for many of the Los Angeles County teams. Los Angeles County has 8 volunteer search and rescue teams. While there aren't a lot of car overs on Catalina Island, the Malibu team and the San Dimas team and things like that, we get a lot of those, just because you have a lot of people that get it. They want to go fast, they get impatient, or in the case of winter weather, when we have it, they don't have the experience with driving on snow and ice, and gravity works, and it's something that they run the gamut from occasional suicides and things, but usually it's people just going too fast for the conditions and going over. And you can go a long ways. There's places in our area where a car, if it's traveling at the right speed, of course, can go over 1,000 feet. And those are the things that you see on TV. And usually it's a recovery situation, but it's not uncommon for us to get several hundred feet of rope and cable out of the road, out to get down to the vehicle, so.
Wow. Yeah, but yeah, I can definitely see where your experiences played nicely to prepare you to teach a lot of different things at CMC. So, well, you kind of talked about a few of them. So what are all the different classes that you do teach for CMC?
Well, that's it. When I started with CMC, again, my background as a wilderness rescuer is really more related to rope rescue, but because of the mining thing and being so involved with the writing of the Confined Space Manual, I teach rope and confined space, and then tower classes. And then kind of a lot of the other specialty classes that CMC is requested to do, I got involved with, because one, I was a school director, and I had this background of experience. So when I kind of had some work experience in the entertainment business, so when we got called for rescue for stage riggers, and we did a lot of wind tower classes, obviously because I'm a mine safety and health instructor, I get involved with some of the classes that we would get requests from mines, and mostly they would be involved in rope rescue in the milling operations and above ground things. But I had mining experience, and so I got involved in those. And some things that are combination classes, like bridge inspectors and dam inspectors and things like that, where they would want not only high angle rope, but also some confined space and things like that. So a lot of combinations. I call the oddball classes, that aren't the ones that appear on the CMC calendar, but that we do a ton of.
Right. Yeah. All those contract classes. Yeah.
Yeah. contract classes that are a little bit off the chart, or combinations and things like that.
So what do you like most about teaching?
Well, I mean, I like being able to see a lot of different things, being able to work with a lot of people. I've had the advantage of a fairly long tenure, but I've been to probably a dozen other countries, and just about every state in the country I've taught in, and so there's that really wide range of experience. And the thing that I really like is when you got a bunch of students and that light finally comes on in their head, and you can see it on their face, where they kind of finally understand what you're teaching them. It goes along maybe a little bit blank stares, and you want feedback as an instructor, but when they get it, and then when you come up with scenarios towards the end of the class and they pull them off, that is, it's so satisfying to see they get it, and you just hope that they practice enough to maintain it if they ever really need it. But at least you've done your part by making sure that they understand what you're saying.
Kind of like that light bulb coming on MA day when you're explaining the T method, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it might
Ding.
be the T method, or it might even be how come they couldn't tie a certain knot, or whatever it is. But that's something that I really, that's really always nice when you get that positive reaction.
Yeah. Well, and this next question might be kind of foolish because I don't think there is a lot of spare time. But when you're not teaching or at work, yeah, what do you like doing? What are your hobbies?
Well, that was the thing. I ended up doing something that probably wasn't the smartest deal, but I turned my hobby, which was a rescue team, into my job, and I still did the rescue team thing. So it's kind of that was really it. And I don't want to be one-dimensional or anything, but between that and some of the other things that I've done, like the standards committees and stuff like that, it's occupied a good portion of my time.
And after working together on some projects with building props and so on, yeah, you've definitely, your construction background shines through in a hurry, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be able to see something come to fruition like that, pounding nails or welding or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's been very cool, some of the props and some of the different things you've created over the years. So in tech rescue, did you have any really strong feelings about anything specific in any of the fields, like rope or confined space?
Well, one of the things that I hope is that that we don't get, this sounds funny working for an equipment company, but that we don't get to the point where we're so equipment dependent that we can't figure out how the systems work. I'm seeing this with just a generational thing where people want it instantly, or they want to be able to push the button on the computer and have the search happen. I know that's a little different than CMC, but I just hope that people continue to learn the basics and understand why things are the way they are, and then allow the good equipment pieces, things like the clutch and the MPD, to come in and just make it easier and faster to do it. They still need to understand how the systems work, be it belay or hauling or whatever, and then use the tools to make it more efficient and make it safer. But I'm concerned that people will just say, "Oh, I've got all the gear," and they don't really understand everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, those basic concepts, right?
Yeah, and then the other thing is because I'm kind of a standards geek, I didn't really talk about it, but I'm really hoping that we continue to progress as far as standards for not only equipment but obviously training, to make sure that we don't that we do things as quickly and efficiently as we can, and most importantly, that we don't lose any rescuers.
Exactly, right. Yeah, kind of that the risk-based analysis still needs to be an integral part of everything we do, even with the fanciest tools that there are out there.
Yeah, sometimes we have the tendency to focus on we've got to do something. We have to get them out. We have to get them up, or whatever it is. And the old guy that taught us mine rescue from the state of California had an expression that we're not in the business of exchanging lives. And unfortunately, we see it way too often where people get focused on the victim, which is important. We're working for the victim, don't get me wrong, but it's not worth losing any rescuers for what oftentimes is a non-viable victim anyway.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and you kind of alluded a little bit to this, but what do you see as the future in tech rescue?
It's still going to be there. This isn't going to go away. I know call volumes and the nature of the calls have changed in the fire service on the rescue team side, the volunteer rescue team side. It's a little bit, the calls come faster because of notifications and cell phones and things like that. But you still can't solve the problems without getting boots on the ground, I guess. And I think that the electronics might make it easier to locate victims and things like that. But if they're screwed up, even though you know where they are, you still got to get them out. And that's where all this training comes into effect.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with more tech, people aren't always making better decisions, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. Back to that earlier thing, they forget about the basics and the 10 essentials and things like that. And if you're out there and you're not prepared, Mother Nature, she squishes you like a bug. I'm sorry, but that's just sometimes happens. Hate to say it like that, but we see it all too often where some of the simplest ounces of prevention would have prevented things.
Yeah, it's not a very forgiving environment in a lot of cases. So, well, hey, John, thanks very much for coming on, and hopefully our students and prospective students got a chance to know you a little bit better here.
Well, and, I'm not teaching as many classes as I used to, but I still like doing it, and I still want to be out there, and I hope I get to see some of them.
So, excellent. Well, thank you.
All right, Doug.